Greetings. I'm happy to welcome you to a presentation of a sister story. I am Sister Peggle Flynn, and today we're having a conversation with our Sister Theresa Mayrand. Now, some of you watching this may know her as Sister Lauren Joseph. We'll get to what happened and why she's now Theresa Mayrand. So, Theresa, thank you for your willingness and your availability to share your sister story. I always say, if we don't tell our story, someone else will. So let's get the truth right from the lips of the person. Okay, let's start perhaps at the beginning. I know you're from Wyandotte, and let's just go on from there.
Okay, I actually grew up in Taylor, 5 miles outside of Wyandotte, in a little bit of a rural area. There were no houses across from us, just fallow land. And on our side, there were pretty much plots of about an acre each. My dad was French Canadian from a very poor family. He was the oldest of 7 kids, and his dad died when he was about 8 years old. And so that was hard. His mother had a lung condition and was very worried about him because he and the boys would play on the north end of Wyandotte. That's where they had lived. And they'd be swimming in this creek that went into the Detroit River, and one of the boys drowned.
Oh,
and
nice.
Granny was concerned about him. So she asked at the local food store, did they know any farmer that would take a boy for the summer as a hand, Well, the grocer said, yeah, when the farmer comes in with milk, I'll ask. Sure enough, there was a farmer out in the Saline, Manchester area that would take. So my dad spent his young summers there, and then loved it so much, and the people were so good to him, that he decided not to continue with high school, didn't start high school, and he worked on the farm through his 20s. Made really, really good. So that was good. That's what made him love nature. And I inherited that from him.
Yes, you did.
Now, Mom was from a German family, and her ancestors grew up on farms in Maybe, Michigan. And it happens that our Adrian Dominican Sisters taught in the school there. And one tidbit that I thought was darling, when I entered, I found out that one of our elderly sisters that was there in Adrian, Sister Charlotte, was taught by my great aunt.
Oh my.
And we picked up my aunt one time, and when I was a postulant, and Mom and Dad brought her in, and our Sister Charlotte said, I remember you as a first grader in your red check dress.
Oh my word.
Isn't that something?
Yes, that's darling. Uh-huh.
Yeah, so that's a little bit about my ancestors. I grew up, like I said, in Taylor, in a semi-rural area. My dad's one sister was on the acre next to him, and she had been there for some years. And then Dad bought the acre next door and built our house on that. So I had 5 cousins next door to play with. And around the corner, there was a girl that wasn't even a month older than I. And Sandy and I became bosom buddies. We'd ride our bikes on this, country unpaved road. And there was an old folks home that held 6 women nearby. So we'd go and do presentations for them and things like that. So we had lots of fun. Now, my folks took me way into Wyandotte, which is a good 5-mile trek, to St. Joe's grade school, which our sisters taught. And that's where I fell in love with the Adrian Dominicans. And my first grade teacher is still living. She's almost 100, Sister Julia Rudolph.
Oh, she wonderful.
Sister Joseph Annette at that time. So that was neat. That's how I got to know our nuns. Now, in high school, the Adrians didn't have a school right there. Rosary High had just been built. I would have been in the second graduating class, but there was no transit, to get there. So I went to Wyandotte St. Patrick's High School, and that was taught by the IHM Sisters. Then I went to Siena, and after I graduated from high school.
So you didn't enter the convent right away.
No, I gave my old bones to God.
I don't think so. You gave your experienced bones to God, to us.
I'm 4 years older than most of my classmates,
right. Mm-hmm.
But I was glad. My dad was wonderful. He had a lot of wisdom, and he said, never worry about what you want to be. Just study what you like. Well, I liked biology. I liked science. So that's what I majored in. And of course, at Siena with Miriam and Jean Walter, I had excellent training. And also there were some neat experiences. I've always been blessed with having wonderful experiences. And Sister Miriam Michael had a friend who was the head of the physiology department at Marquette Med School, and he would offer junior summer research assistantships to college students the summer after their junior year, because he hoped to entice them there for graduate school. Mm-hmm. So she mentioned it. So I flew out to interview and had it. And so that was neat. It was the first summer away for me, and I felt very big. We got a stipend and everything. Then she had told me, now teach 3 years after you graduate, and then apply for a National Science Foundation grant, which were wonderful in those years. And so I did. And they had unitary programs, which was just a one summer experience. And then they had sequentials where you could earn your whole master's degree. So I did a unitary first, and that took me to Sonoma State out in California.
Wow.
And it was so exciting. We were in our waders out, in the ocean, and with the bay, which, was the subject of movies and that. That's where we did a lot of our work. So that was really a wonderful summer. I hadn't been to California before that. Then I did get the sequential the next year, and that gave me a full education at MSU. It paid the tuition, the housing, and even the transportation there. So that was, and I was with all other young people my age, everybody that were young teachers. So that was wonderful. Then would you like me to move into my ministries?
Well, when did you enter?
I entered after I graduated from Siena in 1965.
Okay.
I entered that summer.
What was it, or who was it that kind of influenced you in that decision? Anyone in particular?
No, it's just the love that I had for the nuns in my grade school.
Okay.
In fact, I can tell you a funny story. Miriam, my first day back at Siena after that junior summer research assistantship at Marquette Med School, called me in, wanted to know about it, which I can understand. So after I shared with her, she said, well, where are you going to grad school now? And I thought, oh, that summer, I had made up my mind that I was going to enter in Adrian.
Oh.
And of course, we gals didn't want people to know, about Siena. So I thought, now what am I going to do? Am I going to try and bluff my way with her? Or am I going to let her know, because she'd be bugging me all the time? So my little head was going back and forth. And I thought, I better fess up. So I said, well, I have other plans. And she said, well, what is that? And I said, well, I'm going to enter. Well, she sat back and said, I never thought of that. So she certainly didn't influence me. If anybody,
Interesting.
I love Jean Walter, and
Yes, yes.
us, and she was so personable. Now, unfortunately, Miriam said to me, and I want to be your sponsor. Oh my, because my heart was set on Jean Walter.
Do you think hey, Theresa, do you think they got a bonus for as many sisters that people they could get in? just kidding.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the IHMs, when I was a senior at St. Pat's in Wyandotte, one day I got this letter, came through the mail, opened it up. It was from one of the sisters. You have a vocation. Make an appointment to see me. Well, I thought, what? So we gals got on the phone that night and talked to each other. Did you get any mail today, Tish? Yeah. Did you? We didn't know what to say. Well, here we found out that most of the girls in senior class got these letters.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So I did make an appointment to go see her. And I said, well, I'm going to college first. And if I have a vocation, it will wait.
Good.
So I was attracted by our sisters from grade school.
Yeah. Good.
So that was that. Then after
your ministries, yeah, go on.
Okay. Since I already had my degree, I entered in 65, was a postulant, then was a novice for 1 year, and made first profession in 67. And I was sent to Rosary High School on the west side of Detroit because they had an opening. So I was at Rosary for 7 years till it closed. And of course, I didn't know how to teach, but Sister Theresa Mayrand, I was placed to teach chemistry. So, and she was a masterful teacher. So that helped me, learn. But it was hard because the kids all liked, Theresa, and she had been there and that kind of thing.
Right.
But I learned so much from her, and she was so kind. Well, then when Rosary closed, I looked around different places, but Dominican High had an opening. Sister Anne Maurice, who had taught there, was moving to Chicago someplace. So I interviewed and I did go there. I loved my teaching. Probably Sue Schreiber was one of the most influential people because at that time, Dominican did not have a campus minister. So Sue, Joan Whites, and Barb Rodriguez, who was the principal, the four of us would work together to do retreats and things for the students. So it was, sort of quasi. But I got close to Sue and to Joan Whites. And Sue really taught me so much about peace and justice. I mean, it was wonderful. It was just part of her. And so we started a peace club for the girls that went over very well. That was great. And then Joan Whites, she, bless her heart, she taught theology, of course, and she was very good with discussions with the girls. Well, when I was at Dominican, Lorraine Mordensky, a good friend with whom I had lived twice, was at Aquinas High School in Southgate. And Father Bob Schramm, who, was on our campus for a while, he had taken a group of his boys one summer for an immersion experience in Appalachia. And the girls were bugging him. So he was looking for a sister to take the girls the next summer. So Lorraine said to him, well, why don't you call Theresa Mayrand? So he did. And he had the experience planned. It was a month, not a week. It was for a month. You'd start with a backpacking experience along the Appalachian Trail. And then he had a house that we would settle in Pearisburg, Virginia, and spend the month there. Well, I thought, oh, I'm not doing this alone. So I said, no, and I've not backpacked. I had camped a little with Katie McGrail, but hadn't backpacked. And he said, well, think about it. So he called me back and I said, okay, if I can find one of the sisters to go with me. So of course, because Joan was so good at dialoguing with students, and every night he wanted the students to journal and then to have a dialogue session about their day, I had asked Joan. So I had to wait because Joan had to think about it. But she said, I will not backpack. She had been in some accidents and
right.
Had some physical things that would prohibit her from that. So anyway, to make a long story short, Joan and I set off, and I was living with Marie Damien and she drove one car. And so we got the students down. It was a long trip to Harrisburg, Virginia, but it was a very interesting summer. So that was one highlight of Dominican. And then another highlight, my years at Dominican, I lived in 3 West of the convent there with Marie Damien. And she was a chapter prioress or co-pro, whatever we called them at that time. And she experienced or heard about Crossroads, a ministry that was both downtown and on the east side. Our 2 sisters, Irene Marie Carrick and I forget the other sister's name that I didn't get to know too well. They worked in St. Ambrose Parish.
Yeah.
And that was very near the East Side Crossroad branch. And Crossroads was very good to their people there. So Sister Marie Damien, after visiting those sisters in Crossroads, she came home to supper all excited about this. And she said, I'm going to volunteer this summer. They had a training program where they would train people to be a volunteer. And I said, that sounds good. I'm going to do that too. So we both got oriented to Crossroads and spent a summer there. Well, I fell so much in love with it because that was the first immersion experience for me for the people on the margins in the city of Detroit. And so I said, I'd like to take a year off of Dominican and work there. And Joanne Lucas was my chapter prioress at that time. And she had good impressions, had visited Crossroads. And so I was able to do that. So I did spend a whole year there. So that.
Okay, Theresa, what you're saying is great, but our time is limited. So can I just invite you to just a couple other places that you've been at that because you've done a lot with social service and volunteering and Grace House, and then the one you just left, and then the one you just entered. Those are some significant. Just briefly tell us about those.
Okay, so I went to Gabriel Richard as the next high school. Didn't teach biology there. Was tired of checking labs. So they had a campus ministry position open.
Okay, good.
I became campus minister and learned about, I was asked to host a Salvadoran speaker that was up, and that drew me into the 20-some years that I spent as sort of coordinating a sister community relationship with a poor community, Christian-based community up in the mountains in the war area. So I visited them about 6 different times, and we raised funds to help them, get animals and things like that. So that was very important. Then when I moved on from Gabriel Richard, I went to Grace House for 3 years in Chicago because I had been at Gabriel Richard 22 years. And I figured, okay, it's time for me to move on. And I had done a lot of outreach with the students, with the people on the margins. And so I thought, that's what I want to do next.
Can you explain Grace House to us briefly?
Yes. Grace House was an 18-bed residence for women exiting prison. And it was under St. Leonard's Ministries,
Right.
which started as a mail house for that.
Mm-hmm.
And Bob Doherty, our Sister Grace Doherty's brother at the time, was the head of St. Leonard's. And they opened a woman's house. So it wasn't just men, it was on a different site. So I went there as administrator for 3 years. But before I went there, I wanted to work with women on the margins in Detroit, but it was right at the economic downturn. Nothing was open. And so I did go to Chicago, and that was a wonderful experience at Grace House. But I kept in touch with this Felician sister that was going to start something with women on the margins in Detroit. And when I came back from Chicago, she was in the process of starting Gianna House, which was going to be a residence for pregnant women. Well, I thought, I just don't want to minister to pregnant women. I wanted to work with women's growth in general. Luckily, it took so many years to get the convent that we were going to use, St. Veronica's in East Point, to get that approved to be a residence, but people kept giving us stuff. So we started an outreach program for women, mothers of any age, not living there. They could come. I set up classes for them in parenting and personal growth and that, and people would give us baby items, and they could get baby items when they'd come to class. So that was near and dear my heart house. And then I moved on from there just recently to work with our sister Carol Weber in Flint. She started 20 years ago a New Life Center on the northwest end of Flint. And she just did amazing things for women. So many of the women that came were abused, black eyes and beatings and that. So she proposed starting a resilient community to work with those women, their children, and those families. And as you know, she received, just got word last week, grant for that. So we're just, that hasn't started yet because she had to wait for the official, word. So I did move there, and I'm living in Flushing, which is only 8.5 miles from the center. And it was nice that Sister Pat McGee also wanted to be part of Sister Carol's new Resilient Community Project, but work with children. So both of us moved up to the Flint area. It took us 4 months to find housing, but there's a quaint little town called Flushing, Michigan, that we each have an apartment in.
Good.
So just getting my feet wet there.
So that, can you just explain to those of us that are listening to your picture behind you? Because it kind of seems like that's been your life with that open door. Just briefly explain that picture. Beautiful.
I love that picture because it reminded me of a scripture passage from Revelations. And usually I don't pray with Revelations, but years ago I heard this quote, which really called to me. In Revelations 3, it says, I stand at the door knocking. If someone hears me and opens the door, I will come and sit with her and have supper with her and she with me. And at this point in my life, what's drawing me most is to go more inward, to deepen my relationship with our God. And I love that passage because to me, that's calling.
Beautiful. And you certainly have responded to that. I mean, you have really responded to the gospel message and to the wants of our people, of all God's people. You are to be commended. I know you don't want to be commended, but you certainly know how to preach in various ways. But one thing I want to say to give some credit to your dad, I remember your dad and his running We were in a race together. There your dad was in what, his mid-80s or something?
He started in his 70s.
His 70s, but he was, when we got together and ran something, he was close to 80. And I just, he was he reminded me of my dad, although my dad didn't run. But anyway, that he was a delight. And just, you've had wonderful parents. And it's certainly evident in your life and your thinking and your various ministries. And I know Carol Weber is just thrilled to have you and Pat up there. And but be sure you take care of yourself.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Only working for, I said, I only want to come in 4 days a week, which I did in my last ministry.
Good.
Gotta respect my age.
Right. And your energy and time, as you said, I like that phrase. It's a time to go inward. And we all do that. We all do that differently. So anything else you wish I had asked you'd like to say? I know you had a whole page full of questions that might come up.
Well, one thing is my love of nature and of gardening. At Gianna House, we had a lovely big backyard that was fenced in. And so I was able, because at my apartment, I couldn't farm, I was able to do some nice vegetable gardening. And that's one thing Carol wants me to do with the women in Flint. They have this huge hoop house there. And there are 2 retired pathologists that plant it in the summer. And one is going to move. They had one. And so she wanted me to meet him. And I thought, I will teach the gals how to plant, but don't expect me to run this whole hoop house. Oh. But anyway, so that's nice. But I do love nature, and I love being out in nature. And the one plus about this quaint little town, Flushing, it's on the edge of nature. And so there is a mile walk along the Flint River that I can use. And then 6 blocks from my house in the little neighborhood next to us, there is a lane going into about a half a mile walk. So I'm blessed.
Good. No matter what, you would feel blessed. All right, a couple of trivia questions. What's your favorite ice cream and candy bar?
My favorite ice cream is mint chocolate chip.
Oh, good. Okay.
For candy, I don't know. I suppose chocolate.
Chocolate. Okay. That kind of just gives us another aspect of yourself. And how do you want to be remembered? I think we can get it from your story, but just in a sentence or so, how do you, Theresa Mayrand, want to be remembered?
As compassionate to the people on the margins.
And do you feel like you can be very proud that you are compassionate with people on the margins?
Yes. A beautiful thing. The person who was our board chair, the previous board chair at Gianna House, sent me a note one time, and she spent a lot of time in the house. She was a wonderful woman. And she said, "You are a beacon of compassion and grace and ingenuity, and let that beacon shine."
Beautiful. Yeah. How true.
So I meditated on that a lot.
Very good. And believe it, it's absolutely true. So with your beautiful picture in the background, I thank you in the name of the congregation and all those that you have ministered to and continue to minister with. Thank you for the gift of your life and for sharing that gift with us. You are truly an inspiration and, yes, a beacon beyond all others. So God bless you and thank you. And I'll be seeing you up in Flint one of these days.
Good.
I'm excited I'm not going up there to live though, but she has. Remember, were you in our chapter when we all went up there and painted?
No.
You weren't there that time. Yeah. So that we all have a history with that place. Yes. And Carol is unbelievable.
She's unbelievable.
Yes. And you too. So now we got 2 of you there. Well, 3 with Pat. I don't know Pat that well. But anyway, thank you. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.